you guys remember where we left off last week? What we finished? Yeah, we finished chapter 23 and chapter 24.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I got 25 more, sorry.
Right. We what did we notice about the first three words of what?
And Samuel died.
And what's the name of the book we're studying?
Samuel.
1 Samuel. So, if we're not even done with the first book of Samuel, and now we notice he dies, then how in the world do we get a second one? Well, we're going to find out. But I brought this last week, but I forgot to show it to you guys. It's an atlas, basically like a big history book with maps of this time period that we're talking about. And if you guys, I've got it open to the general area. If you guys flip through these pages while we're studying today, you guys can pass this around. Luckily, there's not too many people here. You guys can see some of the stuff that we're talking about, kind of like the layout of the land that we're talking about, the areas, like the deserts and the mountains and the forests and all these different places that we're reading about. And you can see some of the pottery, some of the old types of weapons and all these things. So these things that are so old, they could still be in such good condition.
Daddy, have you ever thought about where your ancestry come from? That's where it comes from.
Don't be saying you is old.
Now, you guys remember when we were talking about the ark being captured? Oh, hey, Joe. Good to see you sneak in there. If you look on page 109 of this book, it's a small Bible atlas. If you look at page 109 and then keep flipping forward, you'll see where we're talking about. But 109 is where, you guys remember where we talked about how the ark was taken? When was that? That was, about 20 chapters ago, right? About 1 Samuel chapter 4-ish. Now, you guys remember why the ark was taken?
Because they put faith in the ark instead of in the God.
Right. Now, on that page 109 in that small Bible atlas, you'll see the area that we talked about. You guys remember where the ark went after the who took it?
Who took the ark?
Yeah.
The Philistines.
Right. Now, where did they take it?
They took it to their capital.
Their place.
Their territory.
And then, how long did it stay in each city?
Not long.
Not long. And there was a long list of cities that it went to, right? And now when you look at that page 109, you'll see a map with all, if not most, of those cities on there. Now, before we get into 1 Samuel chapter 25 this morning, why don't we get Zeke to open us in prayer? Would you like to open us in prayer?
Yes, sir. Let us all pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, as we stand before Thee this morning, I pray You bless us and guide us in our service. Most of all, bless the young minister as he will bring everything forward that he possibly can. Yet You put it in our remembering and our head. And gracious Lord, be with the ones that's not with us this morning. Pray to the come and to the serve. Most of all, the ones that sick and shut in. Gracious Lord, again, we're short in number, but I pray for all we high in spirit. Be with us and guide us. In His word, I ask in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Now, I think I need to turn the power strip on here. There we go. Heard it quick. There it goes. So let me get my paper out here. What did we talk about last week in chapters 23 and 24? What are some of the big things? David went to,
Yeah,
did he go to help save somebody?
no, he went to hide
No, in chapter 23.
on 23.
Yeah, verses 1 through 8. Did he go to help somebody? Started with a K, right?
Yeah, the Kayla?
Yeah. Now, Keilah was a open city with without strong walls, right?
No, it had bars and it had walls.
Right. Now, why is that significant?
Well, Saul thought he had him captured.
Right. He was excited because he thought he had David shut in a trap, right? But what? Let's see. What did David? Who did David talk to after he saved the people of Keilah? Huh?
He talked to God.
He talked to God, right? I was going to say in verses 9 through 12, he seeks the Lord's guidance, right? Now, what does the Lord say? Who's the one who told David? I'll ask this first. Who's the one who told David to go help Keilah?
God did.
God did. Who? Now, what is God saying now that He has saved the people?
That people's going to turn him over.
Turn him over to
Saul.
Saul. Okay. So in verses 13 through 24, what happens there? David, does he sit there and wait for Saul and have this climactic
him
battle?
and 600 men leave.
Okay, so they left, right? Now where'd they go? They just went down to the next fort down the road, right?
No, they went to the wilderness.
Well, why didn't they just go down to the next fort down the road? Yeah, that'd be easier to find. Who's to say that those people in the next town over wouldn't just turn them in too? So they're out in the wilderness now, right? They're out in the woods. They're out. Well, it just says wilderness. I can't really say woods unless it says, I think they went into the forest for some part of their journey. But when it says wilderness, that could be caves, that could be mountains, it could be deserts, it could be forests, it could be anything. Now, in verses 25 to 29 of chapter 3, we saw David in the wilderness of
Zip.
Moab, right? Maon. Now, roll over to chapter 24. What did we see? That was a big event in chapter 24. You guys remember Jared getting all excited about this last week? What was Jared so excited about?
Oh, the covering his feet.
Well, that one was funny. Yeah, covering his feet being
Yeah, he went to the bathroom.
using the restroom. Some people think that some historical commentators think that covering his feet could also mean, in some cases, took a nap, but it makes more sense to say use the bathroom. And some people think that it means took a nap because that to them that makes more sense that Saul would be asleep. That's why he didn't hear David. But it still makes more sense when you look at other accounts of it to say using the bathroom. But Jared, he was excited about. Didn't he say something? Didn't he draw a comparison to Batman somehow?
Oh,
Remember that?
yeah.
He what was little Jared talking about last week? Huh?
Batman lives in caves.
Yeah, Batman lives in caves, and he's super sneaky, and he's really talented, right? And who else in this chapter 24 was in a cave, super sneaky and really talented? David. Now, what did he do?
He cut off a piece of Saul's coat.
Now, why is that significant?
Proof that he could have killed him.
Right? Now, did he just hide? Did he keep hiding and tell his people, wait to the very last minute and then take him out?
No.
No. What was it? Well, actually, what were his people telling David to do?
They was telling him to kill him.
Why would these people want the king to be dead?
Well, they owed him, and they all had something against him.
They all had something against him, and that's why they're with David in the first place, right? And even if it's not that they had something against him, it's he had wronged them in some way, right?
Yeah.
Saul had wronged these people. That's why they got up and left and joined. They said it's better to be out in the wilderness with David, running for our lives and standing up against the unjust king than it is to sit here and be a citizen of this under this tyranny, right?
She
Huh?
didn't have vengeance as mine, said the Lord.
Right. Now, David, he did not have vengeance. You talking about David, right? Yeah, he didn't have vengeance in his mind. He could have easily killed Saul. That much is true. Why? And how sharp would his knife have to be?
Well, it'd be pretty sharp in order to cut it, him not knowing he's cutting it.
Yeah, because if I were to take a butter knife and stab it through this coat right here, A, I'm gonna feel that, and then B, if I'm trying to take a butter knife and cut this, or somebody else is trying to do that, am I gonna notice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if somebody came up behind me from that door right there, and they just clipped off just a piece that's like this pocket that's hanging out, this pocket flat thing, and then just cut this off. If they were to cut that off and me not notice, how sharp would that knife have to be?
That'd be extremely sharp.
Would you think that he could have just pushed that into my head, or pushed it into my back or something? Could have just done that, and it would have been.
Seems like to me that both enjoy trolling.
Yeah.
See who's gonna outdo each other with whatever they got.
Yeah. Now he could have. David could have easily. That's how easily he could have cut him. Because actually, the skin is easier to cut than the garment most of the time, right? Just saying.
This cloth is rotten, it's in right now, but it's cotton bed.
What?
Cotton bed these days.
Yeah. Now.
But you know, I think David, when he had killed him,
Mhm.
he thought about all the things he had been so good to him,
Mhm.
and like I said, look at him, and he didn't really want to hurt him, he just thought maybe he would change.
And how do we know that exactly what you just said is true? Because David ended up saying, "Hey Saul, come back here. I'm here."
Yeah,
Let's.
He turned around and saw him talking to him, said, Saul.
Yep. Now, what did David do when Saul turned around and came back? What's the first thing David did? Did he show him that garment and say, "Hey man, I could have killed you"?
Yeah.
No. The first thing he did. What did he do? He bowed.
Yeah, he bowed.
He bowed before who?
So,
The king, right? His king. Now, he showed humility. He showed all these things, and how humble he was, how loving he was. But his main goal behind calling Saul's attention was to do what?
prove to him that it means him no harm.
Right. He could have easily killed him, and no one would have known. None of his 3,000 chosen few would have known. But David's trying to tell him, "I don't want to kill you. I never have, and I don't want to now. Let's fix this." Go ahead.
He was inspired greatly by Saul. David was.
Mhm.
He was a young man
Mhm.
that the opportunity and being as close to God as he was inspired by Saul. And same way about me, you or Joe. It's some man somewhere down, Joe, if you'll just not, well, you know it is. It inspired him to do what he does now, to come to church, to serve myself. That's the same thing. That's what greatly inspired me.
Yeah.
That's what we should do. The little ones, you should show them up, show them they got a little person dancing.
We should be concerned about the little ones and show them what?
Love and
Love.
God and,
Oh, yeah.
and try to go down to their level the next one,
Mhm.
something to.
Oh yeah.
I've
And
got the greatest respect for people, for ministers, for young men in church. And I've got, it's just unbelievable. To see them do what they do, what they have to give up to do this. And that's what myself.
got
But most of the time,
Good thought, good thought.
preacher has a bad home life and they try to be the greatest preacher of all.
Hey, what is one of the main themes of the entire Bible? No matter where you look, you can find this.
He sure was.
It's not, yeah. In high school, my senior year, we had these shirts. Our football team had these shirts. You didn't get this shirt unless you were on the varsity team. You didn't get this shirt unless you earned it. On the front, it said William Byrd. That's the school name. Terrier. That was our mascot. Football. That was the sport. So William Byrd Terriers football. You didn't get that shirt unless you deserved it. But on the back, what it said on the back was a quote. It said, "It's not the situation; it's how you handle it." You can see that all throughout the Bible, right? Look at all these people who have. They either start out dirt poor, but they stay faithful to God, and then look at them in the end. Or they have all the riches in the world, and then they lose it all, but they stay faithful to God, and what happens? They get right back up. Job, 10 times more than ever before, right? Look at David. He was just a poor farmer boy, and look where he got to. Then look at David's son Solomon. Solomon was born into riches. He lost You read the whole book of Ecclesiastes. He says he's done everything in the world, all types of things, and he says everything's vanity unless you're doing things for God. So, anyway, that was in order to finish out chapter 24. What happened at the end of chapter 24, 1 Samuel? Did Saul was not necessarily skeptical, but he accepted that he realized David meant him no harm, but he made him promise something. Saul made David promise something, right? What was that? Right. So Saul has been freaking out all this time, thinking David's after my throne. David's after my throne. David's going to take the throne. But, I'm on the throne. It's mine. And after me, it's supposed to be my son, Jonathan. So Saul's been freaking out all this time over nothing, something he shouldn't even been worrying about, because David had no malice towards him. But either way, Saul makes him promise. Say, you're not going to kill me in my sleep. Basically, you're not going to take over. You're not going to do these things. And David, does he say, no? No? David says, I promise. Does he say, oh, okay, I promise, with his fingers crossed? No. He's sincere, because he has no reason to want to do this. So that takes us to chapter 25, which it starts off with the first 3 words, and Samuel died. So, let's read 2, like we did last week. Let's all read 2 verses each in 1 Samuel. And Miss Sue, would you like to start us off this morning?
And Samuel died, and all the Israelites were gathered together, and lamented him, and buried him in his house at Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. And there was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel, and the man was very great. And he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel.
And the name of the man was Nabal,
Mm-hmm.
and the name of his wife was Abigail, and she was a woman of good understanding and of beautiful countenance. But the man was sluggish, see, as you are,
Churlish.
and evil in his doing. He was a house of cattle, and David heard in the wilderness that Nabal had sheared his sheep.
And David sent out 10 young men, and David said unto the young men, Go ye up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus shall ye say to him that liveth in prosperity, Peace be both to thee, and peace be to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast.
Now I have heard that thou hast sheared. Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while they were in Carmel. Ask thy young men, and they will show thee. Wherefore let the young men find favor in thine eyes. For we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh to thine hand unto thy servants and to thy son David.
And when David's young men came, they spake to Nabal according to all those words in the name of David, and ceased. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? There there be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master.
Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers, and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be? So David's young men turned their way and went away, and came and told him all those sayings.
And David said unto his men, Gird you on every man his sword. And they girded on every man his sword. And David also girded on his sword. There went up after David about 400 men, and 200 bow by the slow. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to slew thy master, and he railed on him.
But the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything, as long as we were conversant with them when they were in the fields. They were a wall unto us both by night and day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep.
Now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him. Then Abigail made haste, and took 200 loaves, and 2 bottles of wine, and 5 sheep ready dressed, and 5 measures of parched corn, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses.
Okay, so we're gonna pause here and look back at what we just read. So go back to verse 1. Okay, verse 1 tells us what is the main thing that we get out of verse 1. Obvious.
Samuel died.
Samuel died. What are the implications of this? Who was Samuel? Was he just some dude?
No, he's the high priest and prophet.
Right. Now, was he a good man? A bad man?
Oh, he's a good man.
He's a good man. How is this going to affect David? Does David even know this guy?
Oh yeah, he's the one that anointed him.
Mm-hmm. And he anointed who else?
Saul.
Saul, right? Now, what was the last time Saul and Samuel got together? How'd that turn out?
Samuel told Saul that he would speak to him no more because God had taken his favor from him.
Right. And because Saul had sinned and made all these excuses and all these things. So Samuel, this high priest and prophet of God, is gone now. What about Samuel's sons? Can't they just take over for him? Can't he just be the high priest? Or can't one of them be the high priest? What do we know about Samuel's sons?
They turn out to be like Eli's sons.
Yeah, they're not good. They're not good boys. So was Samuel a good counselor for David?
Yes.
So David has even ran to Samuel seeking guidance along this journey, right? As he's been running away from Saul, he even came to Samuel, and he's helped him out. Now, so understandably, the whole nation should feel something. We got to remember he's in a different position. He's in the same role and same job that he's always had, but now that they have a king and a different kind of hierarchy, the nation's not going to be as heavily impacted as they would have been if there was no king. If this was Eli dying and no one taking over, that would have been horrible. But luckily, when Eli died, you remember when he fell back, when he heard the news of the ark, who took over for Eli? Samuel. So now we have to have somebody take over, but we'll learn more about that later. But right now, here in verse 1, he dies, and where'd they bury him?
In his house.
At Ramah, right? Now, there's some people that estimate Samuel was about 70 when he died, but if you go with that age, and then you have to take into account you have to look at the ages of the other people, like Saul and David. And if you go with Samuel being about 70 years old, then you have to, then you end up with, let's see, David reigned over Israel for 40 years, at another 22 years after Saul's death, which would have made, if you go with that 70-year theory, then that would make David 8 years old at the time of Samuel's death. So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So it's either he was older than 70, he was probably older than 70, or there's a lack of detail somewhere. But either way, doesn't matter how old Samuel was, he's gone. Now look at verses 2 through 12. What is the big emphasis? Who is David associating with here? Is it a man named Nabal? Now, does anybody know what Nabal's name means? Does anybody have a marginal note in their Bible? Or does anybody know what the name Abigail means? Nabal means fool or foolish. His name means a particular boorish type of fool. He's rude or ill-bred. So that's what his name means. So you think his
Sounds like he lives up to it.
yeah. So either his parents were jerks and they gave him this name, or and he lived up to it, or this is a name that was given to him later because of his behavior. So I'm probably going to go with the latter, but it's still possible that his parents could have just named him that, you know. But either way, that's what his name means. And so, what does his wife's name mean? It means my father is joy. My father is glad or joyful. My father rejoiced. This is what Abigail means. And Nabal and Abigail are what?
Husband and wife.
Husband and wife. So you see one who is a fool and one who is joy, and my father is joy, has rejoiced, is happy. So you see two total opposites married, at least the meanings of their names. Now what about their personalities? What do we know about Nabal?
He lives up to his name.
He lives up to his bad name. And what do we know about Abigail? What did we just read?
Up there, she's evidently trying to live up to hers because he's trying to make amends.
Right. Now what does the word countenance mean? You guys saw that in the early part here. What does that word countenance mean? Abigail had a good countenance. Shape, form, figure, appearance. It refers to the contours of the outward form. So she was ugly?
No, she's pretty.
She's pretty. So Abigail is beautiful on the inside and out, right? Now what does that word churlish mean? Does anybody have a marginal note on that? You guys saw that in verse, what was it, 2 or 3? 3. What does that word churlish mean? Well, read that third verse again, and then see if you can figure it out by its context.
Evidently it was bad.
It means it was
That's why it said it was evil, so it started to
yeah, hard or cruel, severe or obstinate, difficult, unfeeling, inflexible, stubborn. That's what that word churlish means. So if you guys are taking notes, you guys can write any of those words out. You guys can circle churlish, and then out next to that verse, you guys can write any of those words because either one of those fit. Cruel, severe, obstinate, harsh, inflexible, or stubborn. So hey, we're in 1 Samuel 25. We just started. Okay, so we see why is David even talking to or sending his servants to talk to Nabal and Abigail?
He needs supplies.
He needs supplies. But what does this rich man Nabal have to do with? Does he owe David or his people anything?
No.
Does he? Now
that don't know.
okay, why would David just send his servants, his part of his army, out to this random person's house, this random rich man's house, and say, hey, give me some stuff. I need supplies. Now, before, when David went up to the priest You guys remember when David was on the land, when he was on the run? He went up to the priest and he got supplies. How?
He lied.
He lied. David says he's not going to do that anymore. He's not going to get things through ill-gotten gains. He's not going to do this deceitfully anymore or do things sinfully, right? So he sends these messengers to tell Nabal or humbly request these things. David says Nabal owes him. What has David been doing for all the people of this territory around here lately?
Keeping them safe.
He's been keeping them safe. You guys see those mafia movies, or those movies where the mafia comes in and they're trashing the restaurant, and they're demanding money from these restaurant people. Why?
Protection.
For protection. Now, do we see David sending his debt collectors in and trashing the place and doing all this stuff to get what he's owed? We don't see that, right? We see him sending several people to ask nicely and say, hey, we're in need of supplies. We know you have a lot. You have an excess of a lot of things. We would just, we'd like to have a little bit of the payment you owe us. Just a little bit. And then what does Nabal say?
Who are you?
He's like, who is David? Who are you talking about? Who is this son of Jesse that you're speaking of? There's lots of people out here that could be claiming, all these things. Now, do you really think Nabal didn't know who David was?
I think it is.
Yeah. Now, why do you think he's pretending not to know?
He don't want to pay.
He don't want to pay. He's got all this stuff, and he don't want to get rid of it, right? Right? But, Nabal tells the servants, I don't know this guy, and I ain't paying. So, now what? Now, when the servants go back to David, look at verses 13 through 17. Servants come back to David and tell him what?
Basically, no, you ain't getting it.
Yeah. You ain't getting your stuff, man. Nabal says he don't even know you. And what is that going to do for David? Is that going to make him happy?
No.
Is David going to say, does he just stand up, tighten his belt and say, well, if he don't know me, he will. I'm going to come out there and I'm going to shake his hand and we're going to get this thing squashed.
Well, he put on his sword, so he's about ready to fight.
Yeah. And what did he tell his other people, his soldiers, to do?
Put on their sword because they're going to help him fight.
Mm-hmm. So he tells about 400. He tells about 2/3 of his army. 2/3 of his army to get up, put their swords on, and come on. And what does he tell the other third to do? I don't know if we read that yet or not. But he tells about 200 of his men to stay back where they're at in their camp and protect their stuff. Now, when we look in verses 14 through 17, we saw that word railed. We have a railroad right out here, right? But what does this word railed mean? Sometimes you hear that train go by and it makes a loud noise. Not like the heavy noise, that high-pitched noise. It's like a scream or a shriek, right? That's what this railed means. A verb meaning, now, in the verb, it means to pounce upon, to rush greedily. He flew upon them, literally flew upon them like a bird of prey. To rail on somebody is to come in fast, to come in hard, right?
A big, large squad of men, like a big a train coming out of Turtle, coming into Jordan. We can feel the vibration. We can hear the sound, the jarvis. And a big group of men, or troop of men, you can hear them before they even got there.
And they're coming in slow. Are they doing a slow march?
No.
They're coming in fast and hot.
And
David is not happy. I mean, understandably so. I mean, he's been out there busting his back. He's been breaking his back every single day, trying to protect all these people in all these places from everyone, including their own king, if he's against them. And now he politely asks for something that he is owed, and not even the whole thing. Not even the whole thing. He just politely asks for a little bit, and the dude spits in his face, pretty much, right? Pretends not even to know. It's like, can you imagine being a debt collector today? You guys know, if I go to the hospital where Joe works, and I need to, like, I broke my leg, and they helped fix me up. They fix me up, and they send me on my way. Now my insurance doesn't cover 100%. Let's just say they cover. I still have to pay $300. Okay. I need to pay. I owe that hospital for the services they rendered to me. Right. I have a debt I need to pay. Now imagine every single time. Put yourself in that debt collector's shoes. They send me a letter 1 month saying, here's your balance. You don't have to pay it all at once. You just pay a little bit, and then I ignore it. And they send me another one the next month. Say, hey, it's overdue. Next month, if you don't pay, we're going to start charging you interest. We're going to start charging you late fees. That's fair, right? That's fair. They're doing their job, and I'm refusing to pay. Now, what about the next month? Okay, now they give me a call, and I answer, and because I don't know it's them, and I pick it up and I say, oh yeah, I'm gonna get that, I'm gonna get that taken care of. Or even better, to make myself fit Nabal situation, I ain't never heard of that hospital, man. I don't even know what you're talking about. Man, you got the wrong number. Can you imagine that? How happy is that debt collector going to be? How happy are the financial people at that hospital going to be?
He's gonna turn it over to us.
Right. Now, how happy is David? Now take it back here. How happy is David? He's politely asked for just a little bit to help him out, and now the dude is pretending not even to know. Nabal is pretending not even to know. That would get his, that would get a lot of people angry. Yeah, a lot of people do that today. Hey, man. Good to see you, Jared. Check and see if this thing fell. Yeah, you're good. Just don't hit that cord. Okay. Good to see you guys. Now, David is angry, verses 13 through 17. Now look at verses 18 through 27. 18 through 27. What did we see? What we're going to read here is Abigail's peace offering. So we read verse 18, and what did we see in verse 18?
We're getting stuff together.
How much stuff? Just a little
Bunch
bit?
of stuff.
Oh yeah, before we jump in there, we read that word Belial, right? We've seen that before. We've seen it used as an idol, as a false god. When somebody's called a son of Belial, what does that mean? Son of the devil, pretty much. It also can mean worthless, good for nothing, unprofitable, wicked, destroyer. How would you like your wife or your spouse to say, "Hey, I'm here to give you what you're owed. I'm sorry about my husband, who is a son of Belial."
Evil man.
How would you feel if you were that spouse and your spouse, you were the one in the wrong, and your spouse described you to someone as the son of the devil or the daughter of the devil?
No,
Man.
that's true.
They would say you were worthless, good for nothing, a base person, like base, low, like, that's...
But it was true. His wife knew him.
Yeah. And what did Abigail mean? What did Abigail's name mean?
Joy to the Father.
My father is joy. My father, has rejoice. She's in what kind? Was she a heavyset lady? I mean, who had a lot of health problems? She's skinny, curvy, and beautiful, right? I mean, she's beautiful inside and out. And she just said about her husband, he's the son of a devil. I'm sorry.
I think she'll be cataracts on the rise.
Yeah, something.
When she married him.
And we know that she's not just some gold digger. How do we know that? Because a gold digging wife was not going, who marries a you know,
No, she would've been as greedy as he is.
she would have been just as greedy as him. And we know that she's not, because
She puts all the stuff together for David.
right, her servants told her, "Hey, we saw the exchange between David's servants and your husband, and we're all going to die if you don't do something." And she's like, "Did she wait? How long did she wait to do this?"
She said she made
Right
her
away.
way.
Boom.
She took a lot of stuff.
Hey Joseph, if somebody came to your house and got into an argument with your dad, and your dad said no, and you're not going to do this, you're not going to whatever it is, and then sorry, I'm using you as an example, I'm trying to keep you in a good light though, and your dad said no, I'm not going to give in to you, and then you saw that these people were leaving, but you knew, just say this one time, it'll never happen, but in this example it will. You just say this one time you knew your dad was wrong about something, that you had at your house what they wanted and what they owed, what they came to collect, that you owed them. Let's just say they said when they were leaving, we're going to come back, and we're going to come back with weapons. We're going to rain fire down on this house. Would you sit in that house and just wait for them to come? If you could stop it somehow, how long would you wait to do it? Would you wait till the next day? Would you wait until...
I don't know.
Yeah, if you could stop something from happening, no matter where you're at, and you could make a difference, and it does not cause you to sin, you're actually doing something right, and you know it's right. When did she leave? Have we read that part yet?
And look what she left right away.
Now, did it matter what time of day she left? We stopped in verse 18.
I was just reading that.
Okay, what we're about to read, pay attention to what time of day she does this. All right, so Joe left off in 18, so I'll do 19 and 20. Joseph, do you have your Bible with you? We're in 1 Samuel chapter 25, okay? And then each of us are reading two verses each. So when it gets your turn, you read 2 verses. Okay, so verse 19. And she said unto her servants, Go on before me. Behold, I come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal. And it was so, as she rode on the donkey, that she came down by the covert of the hill. Remember that word, covert. And behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them.
Now David had said, Surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained to him, and he hath required me evil for good. So and more also do God unto the enemies of David, if I leave of all that pertain to him by the morning light any that passeth against the wall.
And when Abigail saw David, she was hasty and lighted off the donkey, and fell before David on her face, and bowed her head to the ground.
He fell at his feet and said, Upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thine handmaid.
Let not my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaiden, said not to the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal.
And now this blessing which thy handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thy handmaid. The Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in thee all thy days.
Yet a man has risen to pursue you and
Read the last one. Read 31 as well. Read 31 as well. Right after that verse.
That is, that this will be no grief to you, nor offense to the heart to my Lord. I did that you have shed blood without cause, for my Lord has avenged himself. But when the Lord has dealt with my Lord, then remember against it.
Okay. So, what did we just see in 17 through 27? Or 18 through 27? Huh?
I don't feel they were responsive, it was done in haste.
Yes. But so we know what she did, but what or why was she doing it?
For her husband.
The peace offering, right? Now, was she only doing this because when she found out? Let me rephrase that. Did she only gather these supplies for David to give to David when she found out that he was going to come and attack them and take it? Or did she decide it's the right thing to do, so I'm going to do this?
It's the right thing to do.
Right. And she made haste to do it. Why?
To prevent anything that was going to happen.
Right. I mean, so it was her decision because it was the right thing to do to do this. But she was doing it quickly because it also helped that she knew she had a little bit of an incentive.
She would be protected and say, remember thy handmaid.
As she told her, she was trying to do this quickly because she knew she had that incentive of, hey, he's going to. We know David, and we know how quickly he does things. When he sets his mind to something, it happens. He makes it happen. The Lord goes with him wherever he's at. So if he's going to take this stuff, he's going to do it. He's not going to wait to do it. So I'm going to go do this the right thing right now and try to make this thing make David calm once more. So remember, I told you to remember a word because we're going to come back to it. It started with a C.
Covert.
Covert. What does that mean? She came down by the covert of the hill, right? She's doing this at night, right? And she's already sent her servants out ahead of her to scout out the land, to maybe if David is coming, to maybe tell him, pause, wait, my master, Abigail, is coming. Maybe make sure that there's no obstructions in the road, because she wants to just make a beeline straight for David, but she wants to take the covert of the hill.
Is it the side of
Right.
it?
Make sure covert means covering, shelter, hiding place, or secrecy. So if she's trying to go on the secret side of the hill with all these supplies, and she did not tell her husband this, we see that she's trying to keep it from her husband. Why?
Because it's a bad man.
Because she knows what's going to happen if she gets caught. And so he's just going to tell her to turn that cart back around and turn that donkey back around, and you ain't going out to talk to some other dude and give my stuff away. You ain't going to do that. She knows that's what that reaction Nabal will give her. So she does this in secret, and does it work? Does she meet David on the? Now it said when David's men saw her on the covert of the hill, what happened? They descended down upon her, right? So what does that tell you about David's men and the layout of that land?
They were ready for battle.
They were everywhere, and as soon as they saw her, even in the secret part, the hiding part, the dark part of that hill, the road less traveled part of that hill, around his property, even there, they knew where she was, and boom, right down on her. that tells you a lot about David's men are getting better, right? They're becoming better trained, and they were very good at what they were doing, and they were close. How close to the house were they? That had to have been close, because it doesn't say she traveled for a few hours. I mean, she's talking about the hill, as if somebody is trying to say, like, you leave Wilson, you go past the cotton field to get to what is that, Bassett down there? We would say the cotton field. Well, are we talking about that one down there, or are we talking about this one back here? We're talking about this one. We're trying to get to Bassett. And so, talking about the hill, as if it's, some common knowledge here. So, what else did we see after Abigail gives him the stuff? What did we see in 28 through 31? Abigail
Ask for forgiveness for her husband.
right, and so she asks. She has a request. Now, we're going to read verses 32 through 35. Joseph, would you read 32 through 35 for us? 1 Samuel 25, verses 32 through 35. And pay attention. Let's try to figure out what David's reaction to Abigail's request is. 32 through 35.
Then David said to Abigail, Blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. And blessed is your abbess, and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed, and from avenging myself from my own hand. For indeed, as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has kept me back from you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely by morning light no one else would have been blessed to all. So, do we read 35?
35.
So David received from her hand what she had brought to him, and said to her, Go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice and respected your person.
Okay, so what do we see here? How is his reaction to her? He's very wroth, and he's so angry he just strikes her dead, right?
No, he accepts
No.
them. He forgives the.
He forgives him. Now, why? He was just ready to burn their house to the ground with 400, 2/3 of his men. He was ready to surround them all on all sides and take what was his. He was ready to kill if he had to.
Well, he knew she was a good person.
Mm-hmm.
For one.
How did he know that? Did he have ESP? Could he read her mind, or?
Well, she bowed down to him and all that.
And so we see in the previous chapter, we saw David bowing down to Saul and being humble before him. Now we see Abigail being humble and humbling her household before David. And so is David like that? That you guys remember in the New Testament where there was a man who owed a lot of money, so much money he would have never been able to pay that off. He would have been working as a slave for the rest of his life, and he still wouldn't have paid it off. But then that person who gave him that loan before, he said, "Hey, I forgive the debt. Just let's wipe the slate clean." But then that person who was forgiven, he had somebody else who owed him just a little bit, and he would not forgive him. Is David like that dude? No. He sees that I was given when I lowered myself and I, went humbly before the king. I was given a chance. I was everything was reconciled, and everything between me and the king are good now. So David does the same thing for this woman, right? So we see that. Could we apply that to Christianity today? If somebody wrongs us, but then they try to make it right, but they're trying. If somebody owes us money, like we let a family member borrow $50. That's a small amount, to some, it's a large amount to others. $50. But then 2 years later, are we still going to be poking them and saying, "Hey, you got my $50? Hey, you got my $50? Hey, you got my $50?" I mean, that's not really what a Christian's supposed to do. Now we can, if they said, "Hey, I'm going to pay you back. I do. You know, this is how I am. If I borrow something, I have to give it back. I just need help right now." If that's, you know, and y'all make an agreement, you know, sign a little contract and all that stuff, yeah. I mean, they owe you money. But is it also true that you could? It's up to you. You're the person who loaned the money. You could at any time. You could just say, "Hey, I see that you're doing all right in life right now, but I can see that if you paid me back $50 this week, then you'd be in the hole again, and I don't want to do that to you. So I'm glad I could help you." So when I did, so debt's cleared. You could do that.
If he's so good and kinda let that person borrow it on their and then they won't ever pay you, and then they keep on and on, then
Yeah.
they get discouraged and.
And then they do it again and again, and they keep doing the same thing.
Right.
It's saying, "Oh, it's cleared," you know.
Yeah.
You know then not to. After,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Now,
3 or 4
at that part, I've seen some people, they go to the New Testament, like the habitual borrowers. They say they become habitual and never pay you backers. And they go to the New
It's like
Testament.
they're taking advantage of it because
Yeah.
they cleared the debt, and then they won't clear it again.
And you know where they go to in the New Testament to try to explain away and to reason away why they do that? They go to the New Testament and they say, see, the Lord Himself said, if your brother or your neighbor or whatever asks you to forgive them 7 times or 7 times 70 in a day, then you have to. And it's like, there's forgiveness for you doing me wrong, and then there's also you paying me what you owe me. These things, you know, it's my choice whether or not to forgive you for wronging me, but it's also my choice to whether or not you still owe me money. You know, so.
Not old man, nothing.
Hmm?
And I thought I said you're not old man, nothing.
Yeah. No. Oh, no man, anything. Right. That's good financial advice. But
But some has the money, if they see that they can get it from another person, they keep on going and going, like generally.
now, let me ask you this. Maybe Joseph can answer this one. Let's just say somebody gave you $100. $100. Just a gift. Just as a gift. Do you have to pay them back $100? No. They say, "I want you to get something nice with that. I want you to get something for your child with that." Do you have to pay them back? No. But what could you do? You could say, "Hey, if you need me, I'm there. Hey, I've noticed that your grass is a little, you know, you're not able to cut your grass every month. Could I come over and help you out once or twice? A couple times, you know? Just do something nice for them, right? Hey, I've noticed that your truck is really dirty and it's got a whole bunch of trash in the bed of it, but I know you don't have time to clean it. Can I, you know, would you let me take a bucket and a washcloth and wash it down? You know, take the trash bag, scoop all that stuff out? Well, sure. Or, you know, do a public service or something. If somebody if somebody came up to me and gave me $20 and said, "Hey, buy you and your family something nice for lunch. Go out to a good lunch," and I mean, it's hard for me to take money from people even when they're being nice. It's just the way I grew up. But what could I do in turn? I could keep doing what I'm doing to try to, be the best person, give them something in return, even if it's not financial.
You don't have to ask permission, go do it, and they'll go.
Yeah.
I did it.
Right.
I did it.
Right. Now, what kind of lesson can we learn from Abigail right here?
She was humility.
Huh?
She was humble.
Yeah. And she knew that she had the money and she had the resources to pay off the debt that they owed, and Nabal was not willing. He would be the never pay it backer, if I can coin a term today. He would be the guy who says, "Yeah, go ahead and get, protect me, protect all my vineyards, protect all my stuff, protect my house and all my
It's like,
servants.
give me, and no.
Yeah.
Get back there.
Right, and then he gets all silent when it's time to pay up. He's that kind of guy, but we see Abigail. Luckily, he's married to a woman that cares and that pays attention, because Nabal didn't pay attention. He didn't care. He's the one who made David's servants go back to him and get David all riled up. But Abigail paid attention. How did she learn about what was going to happen? Who told her?
Servants told her.
Servants, right?
Do you think she was poor before she got into money? Did she
Oh, I don't know.
really ensure she was-
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but it could be the case that she was poor. It could be before she married in, but either way, her heart was right. So we can learn a good lesson from Abigail here. Now we need to finish up this chapter real quick. So we only have a few more verses. We have about 9 verses. So Joseph read last, so and he read through 35. So we'll start in 36. Each of us will do 2 verses. And Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing, less or more, until the morning light. Verse 37, But it came to pass in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone.
And it came to pass after 10 days, about 10 days after that, the Lord smote Nabal, that he died. And when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord, that hath pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil. For the Lord hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife.
And when the servants of David were come to Abigail in Carmel, they spoke unto her, saying, David sent us unto thee, and take thee to him to wife. And she arose and bowed herself on her face to the earth, and said, Behold, let thy handmaid be a servant to wash thy feet for the servants of the Lord.
And Abigail hasted and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her. And she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were also both of them his wives. You want to read the last one?
Mm-hmm.
But Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Baltai, the son of Laish, which was of Galilee.
Okay. So, we started in verse 36 and we went through the end at 44. Upon returning home, Abigail found Nabal what?
Feasting.
Drunk at a party, right? In his house. And a feast. This was probably a party for, you guys remember what verse 1, what he was doing in verse 1? Look at verse 1 of chapter 25. Shearing the sheep. Did they do this year round, or was this a big, huge special occasion? They did it. If they did it more than once a year, that means they had very healthy sheep and they were very bountiful. But it doesn't matter how many times they did it per year. At this point, they're shearing the sheep. What does shearing the sheep
Shaving.
provide for? Well, yeah, that's what it is. What does that provide for Nabal?
Clothes.
Clothes, and he can do what with the wool? Huh? Sell it. He can sell it, right? Now, if he's rejoicing, and he's a rich man, right? He's got lots of resources, lots of money. If he's rejoicing and having a feast because it's sheep shearing season, how many sheep do you think he had?
Probably quite a few.
Probably quite a few. Because if somebody's throwing a party when it's when
3,000.
yeah, and I wish I would have brought my pictures with me from the restoration trip 2 weeks ago. We had we got to sit there at this place called Shakertown in Kentucky, and we got to sit there and watch a sheep be sheared, and it was cool. It was really cool. I'll have to bring some pictures in here to next time to show you, but I got them on the computer at home. So, but anyway, he's drunk because he's throwing a party because he's happy about all the money he's going to make. Now, what does Abigail do when she
starts telling him about what
No,
all
not at the feast. She
not
waited.
at the feast? Because if she told him at the feast, even with him being drunk,
it was after the next morning after he wasn't drunk anymore.
well, yeah, sometimes drunk people, when you tell them stuff, they don't remember
But
stuff.
then he gets so upset that he was so angry, and then it was 10 days later he had the heart attack. Was
Yeah.
it because of that? What she did?
I mean, this guy
It
is.
sounds like.
You guys have heard the term penny pincher. That man loves his money so much he makes the president. What was it? Who's on the nickel? Jefferson. Jefferson is he on the nickel? He makes Jefferson ride that buffalo. You know, because he used to have buffalo on the back of the nickel. He makes Jefferson ride that buffalo. I mean, you got to be squeezing a nickel pretty hard to make Jefferson and that buffalo meet. Yeah, you guys ever heard that? Or penny pincher? Do you think Nabal's a penny pincher?
Yeah.
Now, if his wife came home and said, "Hey, I gave a handful of grain and a little, 2 sheep's worth of wool, sheared wool over to David," you think he would have thrown a big fit? Probably would have thrown a fit. But she waits until he's sober, right? What does that tell you about her character? She could have just told him when he was drunk at that party, and Brenda, hopefully never would have remembered. And she would have said, she could have been able to say, "Well, I told you in front of all these
Yeah,
people."
but it wouldn't have made any difference if he didn't. She knew he wouldn't remember.
Right. So she waited until the next morning when he's done when he's done with his hangover, and she tells him what had happened, what she did. So she's honest, right? She's not trying to get out of something the easy way. Like Joseph, have you ever thought about waiting until your parents are like rushing to do something, and then you say, "Oh yeah, by the way, I got a D on my paper yesterday." "Oh yeah, that's great, son." Can you imagine doing that? Yeah, he's sitting there back there. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. Abigail didn't do that. Abigail was we've learned 2 things about Abigail's character just from this one chapter alone, right? And we could take these 2 things, whether we're male or female, and we could put these in our lives today. And so she's honest. Now, like you said, it wasn't even 10 days later. It wasn't even a full week and a half later. Like, what happened to Nabal that morning upon hearing these news? This news.
It's hard to understand this stuff.
Now, when we say somebody becomes like a stone, or their heart becomes like a stone, what does that mean? Does that just mean he's cold and lifeless?
It all over.
Yeah. He dies 10 days later. He probably had a stroke or a heart attack. Can you imagine?
I think it had to do with that. Don't
Yeah.
you? He
Yeah.
was so angry. You know what she
Can
had
you
done.
imagine that, being that angry?
But Abigail didn't tell him about this right off. She still waited.
Yeah, she waited till he was sober-minded to
I
hear
mean,
it.
after the feast and
Yep.
then after he's sober.
Yeah, it was that next morning.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see.
Okay, when she took all that stuff to David,
Mhm.
did they have the feast that night?
It sounds like it. It sounds like when she was out, because it couldn't have been too long. Because I highly doubt that he'd be throwing a party if he didn't know where his
So
wife
she
was.
really didn't wait that long.
Yeah, so she was and that's probably why she went on the covert of the mountain, right? So people wouldn't see her. But anyway, 10 days later he died. And the interesting thing is that the Lord, it says in this commentary from Brother Knox, it says, the interesting thing is that the Lord executed vengeance on him for the way he had treated his anointed, being David. Along with everything which we have been told in this context, the Lord's actions clearly show Nabal to be in the wrong and deserving of what? Punishment. Upon hearing of Nabal's death, David gave thanks in two areas. The first, God had pleaded his cause. He took his part in the matter and avenged David for for Nabal doing wrong to him. And David gave thanks in another way. God had kept him from committing evil, right? Because we didn't talk about that earlier, and we should have. David realized that he kind of overreacted, right? He kind of overreacted by saying, I'm ready to kill Nabal. He kind of had a hairpin trigger, right? And I forgot to spend a little bit of time on there, and so I'll just, instead of going back, I'll just ask you this. Did we read about David praying to God, should I go and take this stuff, or should I, by force?
No, he didn't.
He didn't. He didn't talk to God about this, right? He just went, phew. All right, fine. He gonna pretend he don't know me? I'm gonna go take my stuff. I was nice before. That's what he was like, right? So he sends 400 dudes to go take his stuff. And he realized he's thanking God now that he's not thanking God for Nabal dying, but he's thanking God for stepping in and taking care of the situation as God saw fit.
There would be no bloodshed.
On David's hands, right? And basically he's thanking God. He's saying, thank you, Lord, for stepping in and handling this in a way you saw fit. You're the one who did this. Nobody made him have a heart attack. But I didn't do anything to him, and his wife was completely honest with him. God saw fit to make sure Nabal got his just desserts, and so that's what David's being thankful for. The next thing David did was send messengers to arrange a wedding between himself and who?
Abigail.
So there was another blessing right there from
Right.
from the Lord.
Now, what do we know about David? Was he already married to Michael? Okay, and we'll get back to that in a second here. Hey, Perry. We'll get back to that in a second. So he takes on another wife. Now, I should have wrote down, I meant to do that last night, but then I fell asleep. The Old Testament verses where if your brother dies, you help take care of his wife. You take her as your own. That was a whole different culture back then. Whole different set of rules from God. Next thing, where did I lose? Wedding between him and Abigail. She accepted and took 5 of her maids to go meet David. Some have speculated that this brought her former husband's wealth into the hands of David, since there was no mention of Nabal and Abigail having any kids, right? We haven't heard of any, right? If there were children, especially a son of Nabal, where would all the riches go? To him. But if she's the only one and Nabal's gone and she marries another person, it's hers. How much time has passed between Nabal's death and David's wedding? We don't know. The Pulpit Commentary, it's a series that they're very reputable. They're very well known and well put together resources for Bible studies. The Pulpit Commentary states that a widow's legal mourning period lasted 7 days. When one views the wisdom which Abigail has shown, it can easily be seen why David might be attracted to her. Plus, she had the what? Well, she was beautiful inside and out, right? She
was honest.
Right. And now, what a change this would be for Abigail, who had been married to a fool and a son of Belial by her own words, right? But now she would be married to who?
King.
A future king, right? God's anointed, right? Now, we can learn she was humble, she was generous, she was God-fearing, she was knowledgeable, and she was affluent. She was truly, she seems to have been a remarkable person. Some believe that the fact that David took 2 wives during this time shows that the conditions in which he and his men were living in were not that severe, and possibly more settled than one might imagine. Truly, women in the camp would make it harder to flee when necessary. That's what he said. And that's, in a way, that's kind of true for this time, because the women back then didn't fight, right? They were, what would you say, domestic? They were, yeah, they were more firmly rooted in a place, right? So if they had lots of women with their with this army, then how easily would they be able to pick up and move? They'd have to take time to, pick up all this, all the things that they would need to keep the household on. But anyway, for the last 2 verses, because we're pretty much, that clock is 5 minutes fast. So since we only got 5 minutes to do these last 2 verses, let's look. Somebody read 43 and 44 once more, real quick.
David also took Jezreel. They were also both of them his wives. But Saul had given Michal his daughter David's wife too. His son Achish, which was a killing him.
Okay. Now, here is the simple account of David's polygamy, right? Make sure you get your feet up. There you go. Okay. What is polygamy? More than one wife, or more than one partner in general, right? Because a woman could be a polygamist with more than one husband. Did David have more than one wife before this? Now, who does he have? I mean, how many does he have? He's got.
He actually has 3. Don't have more than 3, but.
So he had Michal was his first wife, who was the daughter of who? Saul. So we had Michal, then Abigail, and it says David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel. So there's 3 right there. Now, what does it say out of those 3? Michal was his first wife, and he now took 2 more wives. The text also reveals what about Michal?
That she's been given to somebody else.
She's been given. Michal had given her in marriage to another. What was it? Balti, right? Seeing that Saul had become. Seeing what Saul had become, this may have been done out of spite, because Michal had loved David enough to aid his escape from Saul and then lie to her father. All indications are that David deeply loved her as well, for when he became king, he demanded that she be returned to him. So we're going to see that later. This is in 2 Samuel chapter 3. The action, and to finish this up today, the action of Saul was probably meant to hurt both of them. What was the action of Saul? Giving Michal away to another man after she was already married to David. Most agree that the Jezreel spoken of in this verse is not the famous one found near Issachar, but it was probably a place in Judah. So, did you guys pass around those atlases earlier?
Why did Saul give away his wife?
That, what I was reading here in this commentary is that it was probably done out of spite.
So he did it while David was gone, I guess, for a while.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I'm still studying.
Or did he find out that David got 2 more wives?
That might have been the case. He might have been able. He might have said.
Somebody might have told them.
Right, and so right now David has 2 wives with him, but his third is kind of in a weird spot, Michal. Now we're going to study more about that later, but So what did we see today in chapter 25? We saw Samuel. Samuel did what in this chapter? He didn't do much, right?
You just died.
Yeah, he just died. David made a request to Nabal, right? And who was Nabal? Was he a nice guy? No. So what was David got angry? Verses 13 through 17. David got very angry, and what happened there?
He got ready to fight.
He got ready to fight. Who stopped him?
Abigail.
Abigail. And so Abigail, how did she stop him?
She took in a peace offering.
She gave him what he was owed, right? And let's see, verses 32 through 35. Joseph, you read these. So what did 32 through 35 teach us, Joseph? How did David react to Abigail's peace offering?
He was grateful.
He was grateful, and a peace offering is supposed to do what?
Make it into
Did it work? Okay. Now, verses 36 through 41, we see somebody else died. Who was that?
Nabal.
Nabal. What does Nabal's name mean? Fool or wicked, or what did his own wife Abigail call him?
Son of the devil.
Son of the devil, son of Belial.
Belial.
His own wife. And Belial also means what? Valuable or worthless. So she called her own husband worthless. And by the end of the chapter, he is shown to be worthless, isn't he? He's son of a devil. Because why else? How did he die?
Had a heart attack.
Had a heart attack when he found out what?
And Abigail had helped David.
Abigail, his wife, gave away some of his stuff. Just some of his stuff. He had a heart attack and died a week and a half later, right? And then at the end of this chapter, that's going to flow into chapters to come, what do we see about David and his family situation?
He's married 2 women, but his first one's been given away.
Right. So now, in chapter 26, we're going to see, what did we see at the end of chapter 24? Saul forgave David. Now, if you read chapter 26 this week in preparation for our study next week, we're going to see that Saul pursues David once more. So we're going to figure out what happened with all that now. Okay, so that's all I've got. We'll take about 5 to 10 minute break. So thank you.
Layne, can Miss Lucy have